Alright, well, I am going to hold off on welding the handles on this because people I was dealing with on that arc welder have decided to accept my offer, but I haven't taken delivery of it yet. So I'm going to have a nice stick welder, and I'm going to try my hand at arc welding with a stick welder. Never done it before, but I think that's going to be better than gas welding with my acetylene oxygen setup. So it's a Lincoln AC225. That's the Tombstone, I think they call it. That's the one that has been made for, oh, I don't know how many years. And it's an older one, but it works. So I have no reason to doubt that it'll work just fine. And they've also got some welding rod. I don't know what the composition of the rod is, but I'll worry about that. Since it's free with the machine, I'll take it. We'll worry about that later. In the meantime, while I'm waiting, shipping was lickety-split fast on my regulator IC that I ordered for my alternator. So I'm pulling my alternator again. Decided to try something different. I unbolted this and loosened it up top here, and rather than taking the whole alternator out, I'm going to actually see if I could take just the cover off in place. Leave the belt and everything hooked up. That was so easy. Makes me feel silly for not having tried it earlier. The other thing I'm wondering whether or not I can actually sneak those screws out and remove the brush assembly and regulator and everything without actually taking the winding out. It's a little tight, but it can be done. And I can just sneak this out from behind the diode trio connector there. So set that aside, and voila, my old regulator is out. So set that aside. Alright, here's the new regulator. You can see physically it's a very close match. I mean, can't get much closer than that. So I know it's going to fit in there physically, and then electrically it's supposed to be a self-exciting regulator. Several of these were advertised on eBay. I happened to pick this individual, and he actually sent me his card in the little packet, the little envelope that he shipped the part in. And looks like this individual is Matt Prater, and he's the VP and Certified Tech at Roadrunner Electrical in Colville, Washington. So if you're out that way, tell him I said hi. Anyways, we're going to find out if this is going to work. For those of you who are interested, it was $10 with shipping, so certainly cheap enough. Of course, part of the reason why it's so cheap is because it is a Chinese-made part. It says right there, made in China. And this says regulator D689 D10 SE12. Of course, the SE12 is the alternator, and this is a company called Regulator. Optimum Engineered Electronics. So, alright, so let's give this thing a try. There are numbers on the regulator too, but they probably don't mean anything. Again, a D689 Regulator USA. It's funny, this is USA on it. Alright. Okay, once again, I've inserted my drill bit to act as my little hold down, keep the brushes in place. Okay, so now I'm going to try and reinstall this. Okay, here's the moment of truth. Got the thing wired up the way it's going to be wired up, hopefully permanently. Of course, I'll eventually mount this light in the dash and fix this wiring so I don't just have wire nuts on there. But let's see. So I turn the key on. Oh, that's interesting. The light doesn't come on at all. Well, that's a bummer. Why am I not getting that light now? Well, no idiot light, but definitely charging. Well, it's interesting. It's the ammeter settled back down and now it's regulating normally. 14.3 volts. Rev the engine. Seems to be working well. See if I shut it off. If I shut the key off, which stops feeding 12 volts to that sense line, I'm still getting 14 volts. It's still regulating. So the listing on eBay said that basically this is a self-exciting regulator which would convert this to a one-wire alternator setup. Alright, so my battery's got 12.78 volts on it at rest, and when I fire it up I get 14 volts, so my alternator's working. If I had bothered to email the guy who I bought the regulator from ahead of time, he probably could have told me or warned me that my idiot light circuit's no longer going to work, because basically the listing said that there was a self-exciting one for a one-wire alternator setup. I just thought maybe that meant that they were saying, you know, it was one wire and that these would be optional. But what I now understand is that these are actually not doing anything. So all of my wiring that I've done here is for naught. I could have just run this big one cable with that regulator IC that I put in there now, in there, and I don't get my pretty little light that I bought to mount in the dash. But do I really need a charging indicator? Not really, because I have an ammeter. So let's just check and make sure this thing's still working well, and we'll go from there. So I've got the fuel shut off in the off position. So let's see what happens if we start it. Alright. So I think I gotta rev the engine probably to get it to excite. There we go. Now you see, now, as soon as I rev the engine, now, you see the ammeter, it's charging. So, I think I can work with this. I can live with this setup. Alright, so just for giggles, let's unplug this all together. Because I'm probably going to end up just leaving those wires completely disconnected under the dashboard when I do my final wiring up. Man, that's in there tight. Come on. There we go. Alright, so let's see. Do I have that shut off? Off? Yeah, shut off is in the run position. I wonder why it was 14 volts regulation. That's 14. It's about 14.1. I thought it was a little higher when I first tried it, but I wonder if that's because the battery was at a lower charge state than it is right now. I mean, that's pretty normal right there. It's definitely regulating. I'm happy with this because I don't like the idea of having to remember to hit a button every single time I start the engine. So, this works for me. Alternator. So, you see, there's my charge indicator right there. I know my charging system's working if I see that.
And then of course once I hook lights and stuff up, I'll be able to see how it acts. Kill the engine, goes back to 0 charge.